Awesome. All right, I'm Paige. I'm an alcoholic. And this is Eileen, also an alcoholic. Alrighty. And so where we're picking up today, just like Peppa said, we're on page 23, but we're going to be picking up at the second full paragraph, right where it says once in a while. But I'll do a little review of the first full paragraph, just so we have time to find page 23, second paragraph, once in a while. And so what we were talking about last week and what we were ending the study with was that the idea that the alcoholic's main problem is that we return to the first drink. So my main problem as an alcoholic is not once I start to drink, I can't control the amount that I take. My main problem is that I go back to it again and again and again, despite the fact that it is ruining my life. And it talks about how the main problem of the alcoholic centers in the mind rather than the body. So our main problem is not the allergy of the body, but our main problem is the obsession of the mind, which is the thought that I have when I am sober, that takes me back again and again to the first drink. And so we were talking about, like last week, man, we'll go on a relapse and we'll be baffled as to how we did it or why we did it. And we'll throw up some excuses that maybe hold a little bit of light and maybe don't. And so where we're picking up is once in a while, he may tell the truth. So the truth of why we took that first drink, the truth of why we relapsed, the truth of why we did it again. And it says, and the truth, strange to say, is he usually has no more idea why he took that first drink than you have. I don't know why I do it. There was no good reason for it. There was no logic for it. But I did it anyways. And that is pointing to the power of the obsession of the mind. And it goes on to say, some drinkers have excuses with which they are satisfied part of the time, but in their hearts, they really don't know why they do it. So I can tell you, yeah, man, if you were feeling the way that I was feeling, you'd have to drink too. If you were hanging out at Breezy Point, New York, you'd have to take a drink. A lot of drunks out here, you know? And it's an excuse that sort of makes sense. But when we look at the light of the consequences, the light of the things that happen, I truly do not know why I do it. I don't know why I go back to it. It's baffling. And it says, once this malady has a real hold. Now, malady is just a fancy word that means sickness. So once the illness of alcoholism has a real hold on the alcoholic, they are a baffled lot. Now, I can tell Rob's putting in like some of these words in the, he's got the chat. What do we do without you? It sucks when Rob's not here. It's so hard. But malady just means sickness. And to be baffled is to be absolutely confused. You see, once the illness of alcoholism has a real hold, we are baffled. We can see that first drink takes us on a spree where we are ruining our life. But it's like, man, I don't know why I do it. I don't know why I go back to it. And then it talks about there is the obsession. Now, when we talk about the obsession, we're talking about the obsession of the mind. So you can make a little note if you're writing in your book, no pressure. I do hear it is what the cool kids do. And that never got us in trouble before. All right, so there's the obsession that somehow, someday, they will beat the game. Somehow, someday, I will control and enjoy my drinking. Somehow, someday, I will be able to maintain that 3-drink glow and not end myself up drinking into oblivion. That's what we're talking about. Somehow, someday, that somehow I will beat the game. I will escape the horrors of what happens to me as soon as I start to drink. And it says, but they often suspect they're down for the count. Now that's another boxing reference. Bill Wilson, I don't know if he was a boxing fan, but he's got at least 2 boxing references in this bad boy. The bad boy meaning the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous. That's just a colloquial term for it. It's not. I just call it that. But this boxing reference is down for the count. So imagine you're like Sonny Liston and you're going up against Muhammad Ali and you take a punch and you're on the mat and the referee is going to count to 10, I believe. If we got some boxing enthusiasts and you want to correct me, feel free. I always say I don't stand much, but I do stand to be corrected. So the referee is going to count to 10, and if the boxer does not get into a fighting position, by the time the referee reaches 10, they're down for the count. It's a technical knockout, they're done. And so what it's saying is that we have this obsession that somehow, some way, we're going to find a way to control our drinking. We're going to find a way to enjoy our drinking. Somehow, some way, we're going to get to this place where we're able maybe even to stay sober on our own power. But we get a sneaking suspicion that we are hopeless. And that when we talk about down for the count, I was explaining it in its more technical term. But what we're saying is we often have this deep feeling in our gut that we are hopeless. Does that sound familiar? That's me. That's me. And I know football season hasn't started yet, but I have a feeling Cleveland Brown fans, we're like, we haven't started, but we're feeling down for the count. Oh, I'm so sorry to the Browns fans. Alrighty. You got Joe Flacco, it'll be fine. And I apologize especially for those in the UK, because this is a UK-based meeting, and we're like, I'm sorry, we cannot relate to your egg hand sport that you guys call football. Alrighty. So it says, how true this is, few realize. In a vague way, their friends or their families and friends sense that these drinkers are abnormal. Now, keep in mind, when we read that word abnormal in 2025, it sounds like a judgment. It sounds like we're making you're abnormal, you're a weirdo. But abnormal, without any connotation, just means outside of the majority. So 9 out of 10 people can have a drink and it does nothing to them and it does nothing for them. I take a drink and I set off that phenomenon of craving. And before I do, I experience that relief, that ease, that comfort. That's what I experience. And it takes me. And see, that is abnormal. Not that I'm bad, not that I'm wrong, but that does not happen to non-alcoholics. And just as, if not more importantly, non-alcoholics, they're the type of people that'll be on a course of antibiotics, and you're not supposed to drink when you're on a course of antibiotics, and they'll just not drink while they're on their course of antibiotics. I'm going to stop taking the antibiotics. That's what I'm going to do. You know what I mean? So they also have the power to choose that whether they will drink or not. And I don't have that power. That doesn't make me bad or wrong, but it's outside of what is normal. It's outside of what most people experience. So it says, how true this is, few realize. In a vague way, their families and friends sense that these drinkers are abnormal. But everybody hopefully awaits the day when the sufferer will rouse himself from his lethargy and assert his power of will. And I'll let you know, I eschew any sort of rousing. Like, that is not something I want to do. I do not want to be roused. I would like to be in lethargy. Lethargy is just to sleep, and to be roused from your lethargy is to be like woken up, right? It's that idea that what they're saying is like, man, we hope that what they're going to do is they're going to give their head a shake and get it together, or pull themselves up by their bootstraps. That's what it's saying. So everybody hopes the alcoholic is just going to, grin and bear it and tough it up and get sober and stay sober, and they're just going to do it. But it's what we're going to see is the tragic truth is that if the man be a real alcoholic, the happy day may not arrive. Now, that expression of pulling oneself up by their bootstraps is actually a perfect expression in regards to alcoholism. Because the original expression or idiom, to pull oneself up by their bootstraps, was in reference to an impossible condition, an impossible state. Which is to say, did you know it is not physically possible to pull yourself up by the straps of your boots? That's not how boots work. I can't do it, right? And so when it's saying, we hope the alcoholic's going to rouse himself from his lethargy, wake himself up, give his head a shake, pull himself up by his bootstraps, I am not capable. As an alcoholic, I'm capable in some other ways. But when it comes to not taking the first drink, I do not have the ability. I do not have the power. I am unable to do so. And one of basically I spent 40 grand on a Bachelor of Science in Network Communications Management, which is a degree I do not want to use. You could not pay me to use it, which is actually how degrees work. You're supposed to get it, and then people are like, "Oh, you got one of those? We'll pay you to work with it." And I'm like, "I don't want that. No, thank you." So because I paid back my student loan, sounds like a financial amends that I made. Woo! You guys get this information whether you want it or not, and I apologize. But did you know when you boot up your computer or boot up your phone, that bootstrap process is named after the idiom or the expression to pull oneself up by their bootstraps? That's my fun fact for the day. Will you get any more? No, we're all done with fun. No more fun today. I'm just kidding. We'll have some fun. Alrighty. So bottom of 23, and welcome those that just joined us. The tragic truth is that if the man be a real alcoholic, the happy day may not arrive. Now this is important. He has lost control. At a certain point in the drinking of every alcoholic, he passes into a state where the most powerful desire to stop drinking is of absolutely no avail. So the most powerful need, want, desire to stay sober has no power. When we talk about that state, what we're talking about is the mental obsession. And what we're really trying to hammer home is the idea that I will drink again. Passing into the state where my desire to stay sober cannot keep me sober. My need to stay sober cannot keep me sober. My want to stay sober cannot keep me sober. I don't have the ability to stay sober on human power. Now, there is a lot of things that I can avoid based on human power. But alcohol doesn't work. You guys know I'm allergic to onions. I'm allergic to peppers. I mentioned that. My desire to avoid those foods allows me to avoid those foods. And heck, there was a time in my life, not recently, obviously, but there was a time in my life where I would get up at like 6 a.m. and I would go for a run every single day. It was before high school. So it was when I was in high school. So 20 years ago, so yeah, and I have willpower and I have discipline, and that works in my life. But my desire, my discipline, my willpower, it does nothing to stop me from taking the first drink. And what does that tell us? If I've got nothing that will stop me from taking the first drink, I will drink again. And this is what we're trying to get at with that step one idea, that nothing other than a spiritual awakening is going to be sufficient for somebody like me. So it goes on to say, the tragic situation has already arrived in practically every case long before it is suspected. So what it's saying is usually I'm in trouble long before than I ever thought I was. I was in trouble even before I even thought about quitting drinking. And which is rude. It is rude. It'd be nice if alcoholism gave us some warning signs. Actually, it probably definitely did, and I was just ignoring them the whole time. Because Kathy's here. She's going to be like, as an Al-Anon, no, Paige. That was not a surprise. It did not sneak up on you. There are warning signs all over the place. You just ignored those. Listen, it's not my fault. The red color flags, red flags, they just look like flags to somebody like me. Turns out when I'm drinking, I got rose-colored glasses on, so I didn't notice. Alrighty, so this next part is in italics. Now, there's this myth that's gone around, and I shared it because I believed it to be true, which is in the 1930s that they paid extra to get italics. And it's not true. They probably didn't pay any extra. It's very unlikely that they paid extra to get italics. But why would that myth persist? Why would I share that myth? Well, there's a couple reasons. One, italics are to denote or connote. I think it's denote. I don't think it's connote. Connotate? I don't know. They're here for emphasis. I'm just going to ignore the rest of that sentence because we're not landing that plane, girl. So it's for emphasis. To emphasize that something, to bring our attention to it. Now on a computer today, now this is my second computer-based fun fact, all you have to do is hit Command-I or Control I, depending on what device you're on. That'll get you italic. Control B, that'll get you bold. Control U, underline. Control C, Control V, copy and paste. I got you for those short keys. Yeah. Some of you are like, please stop. I will. But the reason why we would share that myth that it is so expensive is to help us to understand italics are important. And the information in italics are vitally, bless you, vitally important. And it's the worst when I do that. And so how I would describe this myth is I would be like, listen, if you're unsure about how important the italics are, imagine that you have 180 alcoholics that are going to agree to spend money they don't have on something. Now, if you don't know what a miracle that is, get involved in service. I hear ODAAT is looking for service, especially on a Friday. I got you, girl. We're going to announce that. And you'll see, bring up spending money. You'll see how contentious it gets. Now, you'll get people that are making millions and they'll be screaming about spending an extra 50 cents on coffee cups. You know, that's kind of how we do in AA. So did that happen? No. It likely did not cost any more money. It's usually, so there's somebody who's a bit of an expert, and he said it'd probably be around this time when it didn't cost extra. But what we're trying to do is say, this is important. So it goes on to say, the fact is, not theory, not wish, not maybe, not could be, but the fact is that most alcoholics, for reasons yet obscure, so that most alcoholics, we don't know why, have lost the power of choice in drink. And if I have lost the power of choice in drink, I do not have the ability to choose whether I drink or not. And what does that mean? That means I will drink again. Does that make sense? That if I can't choose whether I'm going to drink or not, that drink is going to come. And there's nothing that I can do to stop it. It says our so-called willpower becomes practically non-existent. And I have willpower in so many areas of my life. But when it comes to not taking that first drink, willpower is insufficient. Willpower does not work. It says we are unable, now this is important, at certain times, to bring into our consciousness with sufficient force the memory of the suffering and humiliation of even a week or a month ago. And so it's really what it's saying is that I cannot bring to my mind the pain and the suffering and the humiliation of what happened last weekend, what happened last week, what happened last month. When the obsession is on me, I am incapable of playing the tape to the end. Now, when I first came into AA, I heard a lot of people say, play the tape to the end, play the tape to the end. Believe it or not, I am of the generation that is familiar with cassette tapes and VHS. And with the cassette tapes, when you put the pencil in, you do it that way. I know what's up. I know. Some of you are not buying me on that, but I'm of that generation. So I know, play the tape to the end. But what it is saying is that playing the tape to the end is an ineffective way for an alcoholic to stay sober. It might work for a little bit, but it's not the time that it works that matters. It's the time that it stops working. Bear with me. No worries, take care. You weren't talking to me, but I got that in the chat, and you just do what you gotta do. I'm just glad you're here. So sorry. My attention span is worse than it normally is. Take it. No, we're sending prayers. We love her. Focus page. So what we're talking about is that it's a little like, let's say we want to go and we want to get, fire extinguisher. There's a fire department down that way, Rockaway. We'll go pick up a fire extinguisher from the fire department. Now we show up to the FDNY and we're like, hey, we would like a fire extinguisher. And they said, we've got this great model right here. It works 30% of the time. Would you be getting that fire extinguisher? Because it's not the 30% that works that I care about. It's the 70 that doesn't. Now, another example is like, let's go skydiving. Absolutely not on that. No. Let's go skydiving. Now, is there anyone here that would go skydiving? Now, I'm going to give it some grace. Not even a 60-40 parachute. Is there anyone here that would go skydiving with an 80-20 parachute? It'll work 80% of the time. Yeah, some of you are like, no, and I want you to know, if there's anyone here today that's like, yeah, I will, hang out, please let us help you. We can help you have a spiritual awakening so you don't have to feel like jumping out of a plane with that parachute. It doesn't work. I need something that is going to work 100% of the time. And this is, again, why it's important to understand the nature of alcoholism, especially if you've been relapsing, especially if you've been hurting, especially if you've been struggling. Because you might think, man, there's something wrong with me that I'm not able to play the tape to the end. I'm not able to pick up the phone before I pick up a drink. I'm not able to keep it green. I'm trying to think of all these expressions, keep it green is remember your last drink. I'm not able to do that, and it's not effective for me. And if you're here today and you're finding like, man, I don't know why I couldn't do it, it is because of alcoholism. It's not because that there's anything exceptionally wrong with you other than the horrific illness that is alcoholism, but nothing else. It's alcoholism. If you're unable to do it, that is alcoholism. And we have a solution for alcoholism. Now, I would be remiss if I didn't tell you my playing the tape to the end sort of metaphor. So what happens? Me, an alcoholic, I'm gonna play the tape to the end. And there's a couple of times it'll work. But then there's a time I'm going to be playing the tape to the end. And you know what's happened at the end of that tape? Man, I am sitting on a grand piano. And I'm in a red sequin evening gown, and some of y'all know, never in my life. I mean, I'm rocking the Flash hat. That's as close as we're going to get. But a red evening sequin nightgown and evening gown, and I am sitting there, and there's a candelabra and a chandelier, and I've got those elegant long gloves, and I've got a glass of champagne or Chardonnay, just something. And I got one of those real long cigarette holders. And there's a crack pipe in it, but don't look too closely. And I am playing the tape to the end, baby, woo! And where am I really? Well, I'm pissing my pants drunk behind a dumpster. Now, there's still a crack pipe involved in that, but it's with a gentleman that I just met. Now, some of you might be like, girl, gentleman? I know, I just met the guy. I don't feel like I should pass judgment on that, so that's what happens when I play the tape to the end. I can't see the behind the dumpster, wet pants, missing shoes. Who's this guy? You know what I mean? All I see is this time will be different. And off I go. So that is what we're talking about. Playing the tape to the end does not work. Now, the last sentence of the paragraph that is in italics is this. We are without defense against the first drink. We are without defense against the first drink. I am defenseless when it comes to not taking the first drink. What it is saying is that there is nothing that I can put between me and the first drink that's going to work. There is nothing that I can put between me and the first drink that'll stop me from taking it. And if I am defenseless against the first drink, what that means is that I will drink again. That's what it's saying. That's what it means to be powerless over alcohol. That inevitable tide of the first drink is coming, and there is nothing I can do to stop it. That's what we're talking about. It says the almost certain consequences that follow taking even a glass of beer do not crowd in the mind to deter us. If these thoughts occur, they are hazy and readily supplanted. That just means replaced with the old threadbare. Now, threadbare just means worn out. The old threadbare idea that this time we shall handle ourselves like other people. So what it's saying is when the obsession of the mind is on me, I can't think of the consequences. The consequences do not come to mind. And even if they do, that thought is immediately replaced by, this time will be different. Even though that is an old, worn out groove that has proved not to be true. And it says, there is a complete failure of the kind of defense that keeps one from putting his hand on the hot stove. And if you're writing in your book today, make a little note to see page 84. Now, we're going to get into that next paragraph, but then we're going to bounce on over to page 84, because the theme of page 24 and 25 is the hopelessness to hope. And I've got to understand my hopelessness, the hopelessness of my predicament, before I'm able to accept the hope that is on offer. So there's a complete failure of the kind of defense that keeps one from putting his hand on a hot stove. Y'all know how a stove is hot and then you don't touch it? I don't got that. I continue to put my hand on the hot stove. I think, you know what? The stove was hot in Calgary, but we're in New York. There's no hot stoves in the Big Apple. That's why it's the Big Apple, not the hot stove. It'll be different this time, so here's how. I've been told not to call them Appletinis, and I can't stop myself. Listen, you guys, my problem was those electric stoves. I think I could do a gas stove. It'll be different, Or listen, I'm not in Canada right now, but it's going to be rainy out in the UK. It's going to be a little chilly. Oh, I just need a little bit of warmth to take the chill out of the air. And I touch the hot stove. And I think, man, if you were feeling the way that I was feeling, you'd have to touch the hot stove too. Right? I'm going to kill myself anyway, so why don't I touch the hot stove? And it's funny because I have a burn mark on my arm from when I physically put my arm on a hot stove, and I was sharing that with a sponsee. I was not what the professionals call having a good mental health day, and I might not have been all the way sober when I was doing that. And I shared that with the sponsee, like I put my arm on the hot stove and it burned some rings in there. My sponsor was like, yeah, but you only did that once. And that is true. I only did that once, right? And so it says the alcoholic may say to himself in the most casual way, it won't burn me this time, so here's how, when I put my hand on the hot stove. Or perhaps he doesn't think at all. How often have some of us begun to drink in this nonchalant way? And after the third or the fourth, pounded on the bar and said to ourselves, for God's sakes, how did I ever get started again? Only to have that thought supplanted. That just means replaced with, well, I'll stop with the sixth drink. Or what's the use anyhow? Now, I'll be frank with you guys. I am not I'll stop with the sixth drink sort of drinker. I am what's the use anyhow? In for a penny, in for a pound. I already started, might as well burn it down sort of drinker. But I will point out that is the allergy of the body. And what we're trying to talk about at this point is that the obsession of the mind it is more powerful than anything that I try to put between me and the hot stove. There is nothing that I've got that I'm able to put between me and that stove. And so, what is the solution? How do I stop myself from taking the first drink? Because if I am doomed to take that first drink, man, that's not good news. I need a solution. Where do I find it? Let's pop over to page 84. And let's go to the bottom paragraph of page 84. It's right below the line, love and tolerance of others is our code. Even on the, what was the road we were on? Even on the highway, what was it? It was the
Van Wyck.
The Van Wyck, even on the Van Wyck, Even on the whatever interstate you're on, whatever road Brian's on. I think it's is it the I-95? It's Lavina? Yeah, it's I-5. I got there. Even on the road there, right? And so it says, and we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. And if you don't have a note in your book, these are the 10th step promises. These are the promises that come true at step 10 when we're actively working the 10th step. And it says we've ceased fighting. If you've ever heard that idea that, man, I got to really fight this thing. Man, I can't win. I am defenseless. I'm not going to win against Muhammad Ali in his prime. There's nothing I can do. The fight is over. It says we have ceased fighting anything or anyone, even alcohol. For by this time, sanity will have returned. And when we talk about sanity, what we're talking about is the obsession of the mind has left. The obsession is gone. That's what we're talking about. We can tell because it says we will seldom, which means rarely, be interested in liquor. If tempted, we recoil from it as from a hot flame. And you can make a little note to see page 24. You see, on page 24, on step 1, there is nothing that I can do to stop myself from touching the hot stove. I'm going to touch it again and again and again, despite the fact that I need to not touch it, despite the fact that I don't want to touch it. I will touch it again and again and again. But now, on page 84, I see the stove is hot, and I don't want to touch it. That's That's what it means to be restored to sanity. Yes, there's more than that that is available to each and every one of us, but that is the promise that is available. That I don't even have the desire to drink. I don't want to drink. It's taken. We're free. It says we react sanely and normally. Now, a sane and normal reaction is how I react to onions and peppers, which is no thank you. No thank you. I don't like the reaction I get. That is what we're talking about. And it says, and we will find that this has happened automatically. We will see that our new attitude toward liquor has been given us without any thought or effort on our part. It just comes. And it's what we're talking about is that I didn't make it happen. I didn't put up a good fight. I didn't put up a defense. The change happened to me. And when it happens to me, I know that I didn't do it. Another way to look at it is what I do is I take the actions of the 12 steps. So I do have to put an effort from 1 to 9 and continuing that in step 10. But then the change happens to me. I didn't earn it. I didn't deserve it. I didn't become worthy of it. I didn't do it. But I took a course of action. And for those of us who are recovered alcoholics, man, you might remember when that happened to you in your life. That time in your life when maybe you remember when the obsession left you. But maybe you remember that moment where you look back and you're like, man, I haven't even thought about drinking for a long time. That is available to each and every one of us. And the 9th step promises, they get a lot of play. I think we read them at the end of this meeting. They get a lot of play. There's good stuff in there, those 9 step promises. But if you're new, and if you're relapsing, and if you can't stay sober, the message of hope is these 10th step promises. And it says, it just comes. That it's a miracle of it. We are not fighting it, neither are we avoiding temptation. We feel as though we've been placed in a position of neutrality, safe and protected. We have not even sworn off. Now, when we talk about that position of neutrality, we talk about being safe and protected when I am at the precipice of the 3rd step. See, in the 3rd step, I'm making a decision. It is simply a decision. I won't just say just, because it's a pretty big one. But when I am standing at the edge of the cliff, that is the 3rd step, and I am deciding to take that leap of faith, to work the remaining 12 steps as a way of life, like my life depends on it, because it does. I do not know if my will and my life will be cared for. I don't know if that's going to be the case. I don't know if that's going to happen. It really is a leap of faith. But here's my experience. My experience is anytime I read a promise in this book, that is evidence of God's care. Safe and protected. I've not even sworn off. That is evidence of God's care for somebody like me. Now, deeper than just reading it on the page, my friend Terry, we talk about this is a book of mirrors, and I hold up my experience up to what is in this book. So deeper than that, more important than that, anytime in my life I experience a promise that is outlined in this book, that becomes irrefutable evidence of God's care. My will and my life is being cared for, a position of neutrality, safe and protected. Man, I haven't even sworn off. Instead, the problem has been removed. Removed. It does not exist for us. It's gone. The problem is gone. We are neither cocky nor are we afraid. Now, it says that is our experience. This isn't a theory. This isn't like some smarty pants that is saying like, these are best practices for alcoholics. No, it is our lived experience, the lived experience of their first 180 members, but also the lived experience of each and every one of us who has recovered from alcoholism, who has followed the directions in this book and had this experience. That is our experience. It is available to everyone, to anyone. But here's the thing. It says that is how we react. All these promises, they got fine print, which is rude. I don't want to have to accept no terms and conditions. But the fine print is this. That is how we react so long as we keep in fit spiritual condition. So these promises are available to each and every one of us. And the only thing that is asked of me is that I do the work of 4 through 9. And I continue the work in step 10. And I grow it in 11 and 12 to keep in fit spiritual condition. And that's what we're pointing to when we talk about the solution. And also for those who hear me talk about being recovered, or being recovered, being a recovered alcoholic, this is what I mean. What I mean is that I live in these 10th step promises. But recovered does not mean cured. That's what it says in the next paragraph. Now, I won't take us through it, but I will explain it. Recovered does not mean cured. There will never be a time in my life when I can ever safely drink again, because I will always have the allergy of the body. But just as much as I can never ever safely drink again, is that there will never be a time in my life when I cannot be fully engaged in the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Because if I stop doing this work, the obsession of the mind will come and I will drink again. So what I am is I am in this recovered state, contingent on the actions that I take on a daily basis. So let's pop back over to page 24, because that's some hope. That's some hope. So page 24, page 84, from hopeless to hope. So it goes on to say, going back, very bottom paragraph of page 24, it says, when this sort of thinking, not when this sort of drinking, the obsession of the mind, the thought that I have when I am sober that takes me back again and again to that first drink, when that sort of thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies. Well, what does it mean to be an individual with alcoholic tendencies? Well, so when we talk about what this sort of thinking, you can make a little note that says the obsession of the mind. When this sort of thinking, what we're talking about is the obsession of the mind, the thought that I have when I'm sober that takes me back again and again and again to the first drink. Now, when it says is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, what does it mean to be an individual with alcoholic tendencies? Well, you guys want to bounce? Let's bounce again. You can say no. It's consensual. Let's go to page XXX. We're going to go to the doctor's opinion. Page XXX. And it's going to be the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. The 5th paragraph. It's the full paragraph right in the bottom of the page XXX. So it says, all these, so it's talking about Dr. Silkworth. He's given these 5 different types of alcoholics, and then he's going to explain why none of them really matter. And so he says, all these and many others have one symptom in common. So the one symptom that all these alcoholics have is this: they cannot start drinking without developing the phenomenon of craving. Now, that phenomenon of craving is what we're talking about when we talk about the physical allergy. It's a symptom of the physical allergy. Same, really. It's physical allergy. It says this phenomenon, as we have suggested, may be the manifestation of an allergy, an abnormal physical reaction, which sets them apart as a distinct entity. It has never been, by any treatment with which we are familiar, permanently eradicated. The only relief we have to suggest is entire abstinence. So we don't have a solution other than don't drink for the allergy. But what it's saying, going back to page 24, it says, when this sort of thinking is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, to have alcoholic tendencies is to have examples of in our own life of the physical allergy. So when it says alcoholic tendencies, you can say the physical allergy. And so when we put those two things together, that is alcoholism. When this sort of thinking, and the thinking is the obsession of the mind, is fully established in an individual with alcoholic tendencies, the physical allergy. So when I have the obsession of the mind and the allergy of the body, now again, we can hold ourselves up to this. Do I have experiences that once I start to drink, I cannot stop? Do I have experiences in my life where I overdrink, I drink too much, I can't control it? And do I have experiences in my own life where I've said I'm never going to drink again, only to go back to that first drink again and again and again? If that's me, then have a look. It says he has probably placed himself beyond human aid. I'm beyond human aid. This is, again, the slamming of the door of hopelessness to see who I really am. I am hopeless. Human aid is the treatment center, is the doctor, is even the sponsor. Doesn't matter how great one's sponsor is, if I don't take the action, I'm not going to get sober. The sponsor, the treatment center, the doctor. Now, all of these things might be, the therapist, the counselor, all of these things might be vitally helpful, might be necessary, but they aren't enough to keep an alcoholic sober. So he's probably placed himself beyond human aid, and unless locked up, may die or go permanently insane. And that is the prognosis for alcoholics. Now, that prognosis has not changed since this book was published in 1939. The prognosis in 1939 is the same as it is today, which is we drink ourselves to death, we get locked up, or we go permanently insane. That's the prognosis. It's not good, but from that place of hopelessness will come the hope. So it goes on to say these stark and ugly facts, and this illness is horrific. It is a horrific illness. Have been confirmed by legions, and if you think legions like armies, hundreds of thousands of alcoholics, legions of alcoholics throughout history. But for the grace of God. The grace of God. And if you're like, oh, I don't like grace of God, that sounds religious. The word grace is an unearned gift. And the grace of a power beyond ourselves, the grace of a higher power. That's what we're talking about. And I spoke earlier about how I didn't earn sobriety. I didn't deserve sobriety any more or any less than anyone that is in this room today, or any more or any less than anyone that is out there dying of this illness. I took a course of action that I did not like and I did not believe in and I did not think would help out of a stupid book published in the 1930s that, what does this have to do with me? And as a result, I got well despite myself. I didn't earn it. I didn't deserve it. But it's available to us all. And that's what it's talking about. But for the grace of God, there would have been thousands more convincing demonstrations of the hopelessness, thousands more alcoholics dying, horrific alcoholic death. So many want to stop but cannot, and I can hold myself up to this experience. Have I wanted to stop and found that I could not stop? That is alcoholism. My want to stay sober, my need to stay sober has no ability to keep me sober. So, page 25, first full paragraph, there is a solution. Now, I spoke about this, and it's in italics. We didn't spend any extra money for it, but we can pretend we did. I don't mind. There is a solution, and only from that place of hopelessness am I willing to accept the solution that is on offer. There is a solution. Now, I always want to emphasize, there is a solution, one solution. I emphasize this. It's something my sponsor pointed out. Because I remember him saying at a meeting one time, that's good news, that there is one solution. As opposed to, there's as many solutions as there are alcoholics. I don't know if all of your solutions are going to work. And I don't know about you. You know, when people say it's not a race, yes it is. This thing is a race. I am trying to race the inevitability of the first drink. I don't have time to try 36 different solutions and see if they work. We have a solution, and what's good news about that is that we know it works. It is verifiable. It is replicable. It works. So we have a solution. But I also need to emphasize there is, which is to say we have a solution. A solution exists. And that is the message of hope. But how do I get there? Now, this paragraph is describing the course of action. The 12 steps which will take us from that place of hopelessness to our solution. The solution is a spiritual awakening, and this is how we get there. It says almost none of us liked the self-searching, the leveling of our pride, the confession of shortcomings, which the process requires for its successful consummation. Y'all know what that means? I didn't. What that means is none of us liked the steps. Almost none of us came and saw the steps shared in the chat or shared on the Zoom screen or on the poster on the wall and thought, oh boy, I can't wait to do that. I have no issues with any of those. I'd love to. A searching moral inventory, can't wait. Sharing that with God and another human being, I'm an open book. Oh, amends? even to my ex, I'd love to. Prayer, meditation, that G-O-D word that's all over the place. Got no issues there. Helping other alcoholics? Why, yes. They're known for being so kind, patient, reasonable, and punctual. I can't, not selfish and self-centered, unlike myself. Absolutely no. Almost none of us saw the steps and thought, I can't wait to do those. And that is good news. You know what that means? And this might dispel some things. I feel like I'm accidentally like blowing some holes in some things we might heard in meetings, like play the tape to the end, or just don't drink, or keep it green, or, you didn't want it enough, or you got to have good motives. You don't. At no point in this book does it tell me I need to have good motives to work the steps. It says, it talks about that truly almost none of us like them. So guess what? The steps do not care why I take them. So I can take the steps with terrible motives. Guess what? You can do that. You can take the steps absolutely terrified. You can take the steps absolutely convinced that they're not going to work for you. You can take the steps feeling unworthy of the life of sobriety that you see other people have in the rooms. We can take the steps regardless of how we feel. And here's my experience. If I take them, I will get well. And if I don't, I won't. And that's been my experience again and again and again. If I do this, regardless of what I think, feel, or believe, I will get well. But if I don't do them, regardless of what I think, feel, or believe, I will get drunk. Or I will get to a place where I want to kill myself. And so that is good news. The actions of all 12 steps are accessible to all of us in the here and now. Right now, we can all take this course of action. It goes on to say, but we saw that it really worked in others. And we had come to believe in the hopelessness and futility of life as we had been living it. And in Tradition 9 in the 12 and 12, it talks about how Alcoholics Anonymous, we have 2 disciplinarians. We need no others. Those 2 disciplinarians are great love and great suffering. And alcoholism has a job. It's not my job, although I used to joke that my book is hardcover so I could beat the willingness into the sponsee. I'm just kidding. We use our words in AA. We don't hit people. And listen, I couldn't if I tried. And this book would not hold up if I tried to hit somebody. Not going to hit anyone. Don't you worry. That is not my job. My job is not great pain. My job is not to lecture. My job is not to nag, although I will go on a tangent or two, but you guys know that. My job is great love. Alcoholism's job is great suffering. Alcoholism's job is to take me to that place where my life is futile, where my life is hopeless, where I can't stand another day the way that I've been living it, and I grab a hold of the hope. You see, my job is great love. Is to show up in a loving way, properly armed with facts about myself, to explain what it means to be an alcoholic. The obsession, the allergy, to offer this way of life to anyone who wants it without judgment or condemnation. That's my job. That is great love. And it goes on to say, when therefore we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved. This is what it means, recovered, not cured, but solved. That today I am sober and free. Solved. And again, it's pointing to the need that I have to be a demonstration of this power. Doesn't do any good if I tell you what to do. You know, we were joking with Eileen Sponsee earlier about like being an Eeyore, like, oh no, I've lost my tail. I better do these steps. Don't drink and go to meetings, right? If I am an Eeyore, you don't want to be an Eeyore. Who wants to? I spent most of my life as an Eeyore, mind you. That was who I was. That's who I am at core, at base, at root, or at least I thought that I don't want to be this Eeyore. And so I've got to be a demonstration of this power. And I'm not talking to put on masks. I'm not talking about putting on airs. I'm not talking about faking it. I'm talking about I got to work this thing like my life depends on it, because it does. And this is for me, it's not for you. I've also got to work these 12 steps like your life depends on it. That's how I got to do this thing. Y'all don't got to do nothing, but that's what I got to do. so that I get to be a demonstration to those that do not know that there is a way out, that there is an answer. And I know I'm a little obnoxious at times. And sometimes people are like, oh, she's a bit much, but you didn't know me when I got here. I was miserable. I could suck the energy out of the room. I was suicidal. I was a Debbie Downer. I was a full-on Eeyore. It took a lot of work to experience this freedom. And it was all God's grace. So it says, when therefore we were approached, by the way, we were approached, which means that if I am a recovered alcoholic, I've got to approach the newcomer. I've got to carry this message to the newcomer, get their number, reach out to them. That's what's asked of me. So when therefore we were approached by those in whom the problem had been solved, there was nothing left for us but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. Now this, oh man, I gotta wrap us up in like a minute, Peppa. Whoopsies. I'm on a tablet and I didn't have the time and I was trying to check it on my phone. Alrighty. There was nothing left for us but to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools laid at our feet. The simple kit of spiritual tools are the 12 steps as outlined in this book. That's what they are. And it says, we have found much of heaven. And where do we find heaven? In the here and now. We've found it here and now. Freedom, joy, heaven, here and now. And I know that to be true also because that's where I found hell. Hell was my existence as I was living it. So we've found much of heaven and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence of which we had not even dreamed. The last time we spoke about that fourth dimension of existence, it was catapulted. So now at this point, we got some rocket boosters on this bad boy. We are going with some velocity. And the point of this is it does not take long to get well. It does not take long to recover. It does not take long to pick up the simple kit of spiritual tools. And the fourth dimension is just describing what it is to live in an awakened state, to live in that place of spiritual awakening. And next week when we dive in, we're going to see a sneaky description of what the spiritual awakening looks like. So I have left you like 1 minute, so over to you, Peppa. Sorry.